You ever play a modern game and think, yeah, this looks good, but something's missing? Well, turns out the PS2 figured it out 2 decades ago. From massive worlds and emotional storytelling to combat systems that still feel ahead of their time, some of these games didn't just age well, they're straight up embarrassing today's AAA releases. In this video, we're counting down 43 jaw-dropping PS2 games that prove one thing: they don't make them like they used to. The moment you step into the world of Shadow of the Colossus, you know you're not playing a typical PS2 game. Everything about it feels massive, quiet, and deeply haunting. It strips away all the noise. No traditional levels, no swarms of enemies, just you, your horse, and 16 giants standing between you and the one thing you're trying to bring back to life. This game pushed the PS2 like almost nothing else. It wasn't just about pretty visuals. It was about scale, about weight, about atmosphere. Each Colossi moves with purpose, reacts to your presence, and feels like a force of nature. And considering the PS2's limitations, the animation quality and detail on these creatures is just absurd. From the way their fur ripples in the wind to the way dust kicks up with every massive step, it's hard to believe this ran on early 2000s hardware. What's even crazier is how the lighting engine pulls everything together. The way sunlight filters through the clouds and hits the ruins or the fur on a colossus. It gives the whole world this surreal, almost dreamlike glow. Shadows stretch naturally as the time of day changes, and even distant mountains feel alive thanks to the subtle haze and atmospheric depth. It's the kind of visual trickery that makes the world feel massive without actually needing to render every detail up close. And the game's empty landscapes aren't laziness, they're intentional. That silence between battles? It builds tension. It gives weight to what you're doing. And by the time you finally bring down a colossus, the game doesn't celebrate, it mourns. That emotional shift is part of what makes it unforgettable. If you grew up with the PlayStation 2, there's a good chance you spent hours trying to shave seconds off your lap times in Gran Turismo 3. This wasn't just a racing game, it was a full-blown driving simulator that demanded precision, patience, and pure dedication. You didn't just pick a car and go. You started small, maybe with a used hatchback, and slowly worked your way up by winning races, upgrading parts, and making smart choices. Every little decision mattered. The wrong tires? You're sliding all over the place. Miss a gear shift? There goes the lead. And let's not forget the license tests. Yeah, they were brutal, but they taught you how to actually drive. It wasn't just go fast and win. You had to master cornering, braking, acceleration, and track control through a series of short-timed challenges. Some of them were straight-up painful to beat, but once you did, it felt like a badge of honor. What made Gran Turismo 3 so addictive was how real it felt. The handling was tight, the sound of the engines was legit, and the sense of speed, especially for its time, was unmatched. It wasn't about flashy crashes or arcade-style drifting. This was serious technical racing, and that challenge kept you coming back. Plus, unlocking rare cars and grinding for cash actually felt rewarding. It turned every race into a grind you didn't mind at all. Even today, fans still talk about it as one of the best racing sims ever made. And honestly, they're not wrong. Suikoden 3 is one of those games that flew under the radar for a lot of people, but once you dive in, it grabs you and doesn't let go. It's got a setup that most RPGs wouldn't dare touch. 3 completely different protagonists, each with their own story, goals, and moral compass. You've got Hugo, a young warrior trying to protect his homeland. Chris, a respected knight torn between duty and truth, and Geto, a mercenary captain who's seen way too much. Now, the real kicker? You're not just rolling with a party of 5 or 6 characters. You're out here trying to recruit 108 people. Yeah, 108. And somehow, the game makes each one feel like they belong. They're not just filler, they've got stories, personalities, and reasons to be there. Some join for personal reasons, others by accident, and a few just because they vibe with your mission. And since each of the three protagonists has their own path, the game flips perspectives constantly, giving you a full 360 look at this massive conflict. By the time all their stories crash together, you're locked in. Combat switches things up too. Each lead character brings a different style to the battlefield, and the game constantly pushes you to think ahead. It's turn-based, but not in a lazy way. You've got formations, group attacks, and a duel system that makes certain battles feel way more intense. And this was the first Suikoden to go full 3D, which was a big shift for the series. It may not have aged like fine wine visually, but back then, it was a big deal. But the structure is what really makes it shine, though. You're not just following one path. You see the war unfold from different sides, and by the end, you're the one making the final call. Want a different perspective? Replay it. The game practically dares you to see the full picture. Sure, it's not perfect. No voice acting in a time when games like Final Fantasy X were already nailing it was a letdown. The camera could be annoying, and the soundtrack, while good, didn't always hit the emotional highs some fans were hoping for. But none of that overshadows what Suikoden 3 achieved. But even with those flaws, Suikoden 3 still stands tall as one of the best RPGs on the PS2, locking in a well-deserved score of 86 on Metacritic. There's a reason GTA San Andreas is still burned into every gamer's memory. This game didn't just raise the bar for open-world design, it straight up destroyed it. It was wild how much you could do. One moment you're robbing a liquor store, the next you're skydiving over Las Venturas or sneaking into a military base just because you can. What really hit different was how much control you had over everything. Want to bulk CJ up? Hit the gym. Let him get lazy and eat fast food all day and he'll gain weight. His appearance, skills, even how people treated him. It all changed depending on how you played. That kind of character evolution was unheard of at the time. And let's not forget the radio stations. Man, those added a whole new layer of immersion. Whether you were cruising through the hood or gunning it down the freeway, the soundtrack set the vibe. You had everything, from West Coast hip-hop to country music to hilarious talk shows. And the map was massive. From the city chaos of Los Santos to the desert roads of Bone County, every area had its own personality. You never knew what was coming next: street races, gang wars, jetpacks, train heists. It was endless. But underneath all that chaos was a solid story. Family drama, corrupt cops, betrayal, and a journey that pulled you from the bottom to the top. It felt raw and personal, and it's why San Andreas still gets love decades later.
Huh? Hey, over here, come on, keep up.
Back when the PS2 was reaching its final stretch, Kojima Productions dropped something that felt more like a full-blown Hollywood spy thriller than a game. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater wasn't just good. It was a technical beast, a visual marvel, and a bold goodbye to an entire generation of gaming. Set deep in the Cold War era, this game didn't hold back. From the dense jungle environments to the cinematic camera work, everything was meticulously crafted to pull you into the world of Snake. The game didn't rely on flashy effects. It nailed that moody, overcast jungle vibe using smart light placement and subtle shadow work. You could be crawling through grass and suddenly notice how the sunlight filters through tree branches, or how fog slowly rolls in and out depending on the time of day. And the animations? Unreal for the time. Every movement looked smooth and grounded, thanks to an impressive use of motion capture that was way ahead of what most other studios were doing back then. What really made this game shine, though, was how Kojima pushed the PS2 to its absolute limit. You had massive outdoor areas, real-time camouflage mechanics, complex enemy AI, and somehow it all ran beautifully. No shortcuts, no compromises. Just raw vision executed with precision. On top of all that, the game had a surprisingly deep system for managing your gear and healing items. You weren't just picking up new weapons, you had to customize your camo for different environments, treat injuries individually, and manage stamina to stay sharp in long missions. It made you think before every encounter, like patching up a cut or fixing a broken bone after a rough fight. Even food played a role, with different animals offering different benefits, pushing you to explore and experiment with what you hunted or foraged. It added this layer of survival that made the entire experience feel more grounded and tactical. Even with remasters and a full remake on the way, the original still hits differently. There's something special about what they managed to achieve on that old hardware. Resident Evil 4 changed the game. It took survival horror, added a serious dose of adrenaline, and created something no one had ever seen before. That over-the-shoulder camera? Yeah, that became the blueprint for third-person shooters after this. The tension was real. Every corner felt like a trap, every bullet had to count, and every enemy, especially those chainsaw guys, kept your heart racing. What made it stand out wasn't just the action. It was the atmosphere, the pacing, the way the game constantly threw new challenges at you without ever feeling unfair. You were never fully safe, and that kept you locked in. When it hit the PlayStation 2 was a global takeover. More people got to play it, and its legacy exploded. Sure, the remake looks cleaner and plays smoother, but the original still hits different. It's gritty, intense, and unforgettable. Final Fantasy XII took everything we thought we knew about the series and flipped it on its head. No crystals, no teen angst heroes saving the world with the power of love. This was political drama, full-blown empire wars, and backstabbing royal families. Set in the world of Ivalice, the game drops you into a full-blown conflict where kingdoms are falling, alliances are breaking, and freedom is on the line. You follow Vaughn, a street rat from Rabanastre, with big dreams and a bigger grudge. But let's be real, he's not the main event. The real heart of the story is Princess Ashe, fighting to reclaim her kingdom, and a ragtag group that includes sky pirates and fallen knights, all tangled up in a plot way bigger than themselves. The writing hits like a slow burn, it doesn't spoon-feed you. You've got to pay attention, but once it clicks, it's worth it. But what really flipped the table was the combat. No random battles and no classic turns. Instead, you had real-time fights with visible enemies, and a system called gambits that let you program your party's behavior. Want your healer to autocast cure when someone drops below 50% HP? Done. Want your tank to focus only on flying enemies? Easy. It was like setting up a custom AI, and once you mastered it, the flow of battle felt effortless. The license board let you shape every character however you wanted. Your black mage could become a heavy-hitting knight if you wanted. It was all about freedom and experimentation, especially in later versions like the Zodiac Age. On top of that, the voice acting was a leap forward. British accents, dramatic delivery, and dialogue that felt straight out of a fantasy novel. It gave weight to the politics, the stakes, and the world itself. But let's be real, some players just weren't feeling it. The gambit system, while brilliant for some, me included, made others feel like they were just watching the gameplay itself. And then there was the grind. The long stretches of open zones and respawning enemies could get repetitive fast, especially if you weren't into micromanaging. Also, the story took its sweet time getting anywhere, and a lot of people felt that Vaughn was kind of just there. Like, he was supposed to be the lead, but ended up feeling like a background character in his own game. And without a doubt, Final Fantasy XII is the most divisive game in the comments of my videos. But even with all the criticism, Final Fantasy XII is still a spectacular game, especially in the Zodiac Age version, where everything feels tighter, faster, and more balanced. It plays like a modern RPG, and honestly, it's more fun than most of what's out there today. And with a Metacritic score of 92, the numbers back it up.
shattered dream that's like a far-off memory.
Kingdom Hearts 2 is one of those sequels that didn't just live up to the hype, it crushed it. What started as a wild mashup of Disney and Square Enix turned into something way deeper. You're not just bouncing through Disney worlds for fun, you're digging into a layered story full of mystery, emotion, and some seriously mind-bending twists. Right from the start, the game throws a curveball. You don't even play as Sora at first. You're this quiet kid named Roxas, stuck in a weird, dreamlike version of reality, and nothing makes sense. It's slow, it's emotional, and it sets the tone for how wild this story's about to get. Then bam, you're back as Sora, teaming up with Donald and Goofy, jumping between worlds like the Lion King, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Tron, all while battling the shadowy Organization 13. These guys are tied to Sora's own past in ways that slowly unravel as you move forward. You've also got clones, alternate versions of characters, lost memories. Yeah, it gets complicated. But it's also what keeps you locked in. The combat is fast, flashy, and super satisfying. You've got your basic attacks, magic, summons, and then these insane drive forms that let Sora transform mid-fight into a total beast. It feels smooth, looks amazing, and never really gets old. And if you're into exploring every little corner, there's a ton of optional content to dig through. Tons of secret bosses, challenges, and collectibles that'll keep you busy for hours. Sure, the game's pretty linear. You're mostly going from cutscene to fight to cutscene. But the pacing works because the story constantly pulls you in. It's emotional, it's mysterious, and if you're a Disney fan, it hits all the right nostalgic buttons. Even the deeper lore stuff like nobodies, hearts, and all that existential stuff feels more grounded thanks to how personal the journey is for Sora and his friends. The only real drag? Those long loading times before battles. Yeah, they break the momentum a bit and can get annoying. Kingdom Hearts 2 is weird, emotional, action-packed, and totally unforgettable, landing an impressive 87 on Metacritic.
Okay.
If you had a PS2 and didn't play Tekken 5, did you even game back then? This game hit different. It took everything that made the series legendary and leveled it up. The punches landed harder, the movement was faster, and the combos? Clean, brutal, and insanely satisfying. Whether you were button mashing with your friends or mastering advanced combos, Tekken 5 gave you a reason to keep coming back. It had one of the slickest rosters ever, mixing old-school legends with fresh new faces. Each fighter had their own unique style, making every matchup feel fresh. And let's not forget the graphics. For a PlayStation 2 game, this thing looked gorgeous. Smooth animations, detailed models, and stages that actually felt alive. One of the coolest things about Tekken 5 was the arcade history mode. You could actually play the first 3 Tekkens right from the main menu. But what really made Tekken 5 stand out, though, was how tight the gameplay felt. It was easy to pick up but tough to master, which is exactly what you want in a fighting game. It respected casual players but rewarded the ones who put in the time to get good. When people talk about the PS2 era, they usually mention RPGs or action games first. But let's be real, Ace Combat Zero was in a league of its own. Bandai Namco went all in on this one, delivering an aerial combat experience that still holds up today, not just for how it plays, but for how it looks. The dogfights are intense, cinematic, and surprisingly immersive for a game from that era. Every missile launch, every jet maneuver, every explosion feels like it was pulled straight out of a blockbuster movie. But the way the clouds were rendered back then still blows my mind. You'd be flying through thick layers of atmosphere, watching the sun break through in streaks, casting dynamic shadows over the terrain below. And the lighting during dogfights wasn't just flashy, it gave real depth to the sky. Explosions would light up your cockpit for a split second, then vanish into smoke trails that twisted with the wind. It's no exaggeration to say it captures that Top Gun vibe better than most actual Top Gun games ever did. What really sets Ace Combat Zero apart isn't just the gameplay, though. The atmosphere is razor-sharp, the soundtrack hits hard, and the way it blends storytelling with high-speed action gives the whole experience a unique identity within the series. For a lot of fans, this is the peak of the franchise, and honestly, it's easy to see why. Another thing that made the game so addictive was the aircraft upgrade system. You didn't just pick a jet and fly, each mission gave you cash based on performance. And you could invest that into unlocking new planes, better weapons, and different loadouts. Some jets handled better in tight turns, others packed more firepower or speed, and finding the right one for your playstyle felt super satisfying. Even today, firing it up feels like stepping into a jet cockpit and being dropped into the middle of a beautifully chaotic sky war. It's polished, it's powerful, and it's one of the clearest examples of how far developers could go with the PS2 when they really understood the hardware.
All right, that's it. Fly right into his tail. Watch your six. Remember the fun.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying the video, do me a quick favor and check out Xmod. It's a free tool that lets you skip the grind and the boring parts in over 5,000 single-player games. Need more gold? Can't beat that one boss? With just one click, you've got cheats, trainers, mods, and other features ready to go. No setup, no headaches. It's 100% safe with your Steam account, but yes, single-player only. And just downloading once through my link gives a small commission to the channel and helps us keep making more content for you. It takes less than 15 seconds, I promise. But you have no idea how much it helps us out. So, go ahead and give it a try, it's free. Links in the description and pinned comment. When people talk about the golden era of RPGs, Final Fantasy X always shows up in the conversation, and for good reason. It dropped at the end of 2001 and flipped the script on what a Final Fantasy could be. This was the first time we heard the characters speak, and suddenly, the world of Spira didn't just look alive, it sounded alive. And that made everything hit harder. You play as Titus, a cocky blitzball star who gets ripped out of his high-tech city and thrown into a world ruled by faith, fear, and a giant sea monster named Sin. Yeah, that's the actual name, Sin. And it's more than just a monster. It's a symbol of an endless cycle of destruction, wrapped up in religion and sacrifice. And at the heart of it all is Yuna, a summoner on a journey to bring peace through a ritual that might cost her life. The story hits hard. It's part love story, part coming of age, and part deep dive into how people use religion to cope with pain and guilt. And while some of the cutscenes have aged weirdly, yeah, we all remember that laugh, the emotional beats still land today. When this game gets heavy, it gets heavy. Final Fantasy X ditched the old overworld map and gave us real-scale environments. You walk through actual places, not just icons on a map. It's more linear than past entries, sure, but it flows naturally. No wandering in circles, just clean pacing and solid momentum. Gameplay-wise, FF10 made some bold moves. No more active time battles. Instead, you've got a clean, turn-based system where you can see the move order and swap characters mid-fight. It gives you full control and tons of room for strategy. One minute you're smashing enemies with Auron, the next you're bringing in Lulu for some fire magic, then healing up with Yuna, all without missing a beat. The sphere grid takes character progression to another level. It's this massive web where you can customize how each person grows, and it makes leveling feel way more involved than just picking a class or grinding XP. Visually, Spira is stunning. From the beaches of Bezaid to the frozen paths of Macalania, every place feels handcrafted. And the music? Just unforgettable. And To Xanarkand still hits like a truck. Final Fantasy X nailed the balance between innovation and tradition. And with a Metacritic score of 92, it didn't just raise the bar, it became the bar for PS2 RPGs.
Prince, wake up!
If you think tactical RPGs are all about serious battles and epic wars, think again. Disgaea Hour of Darkness takes everything you expect from the genre and flips it upside down with its over-the-top humor, absurdly deep mechanics, and an unforgettable cast of characters. This game doesn't just break the rules, it laughs at them. You step into the shoes of Laharl, a demon prince with an ego the size of the Netherworld, who wakes up after a 2-year nap only to find out his father, the Overlord, is dead. Naturally, chaos has erupted, and now everyone wants the throne, but Laharl isn't about to let anyone take his rightful place. Alongside his hilariously unpredictable allies, he sets off on a ridiculous, yet surprisingly heartfelt journey to reclaim power. What truly makes Disgaea shine isn't just its comedy, it's the sheer depth of its gameplay. Battles are grid-based, but the level of customization and strategy goes far beyond what most RPGs offer. You can stack characters on top of each other, throw them across the map, dive into randomly generated dungeons within your own weapons, and level up infinitely. You heard that right. The level cap is 9,999, and if that's not enough, you can reincarnate your characters to start all over, but stronger. The best part? You don't have to hunt down an old PlayStation 2 copy to play it. Disgaea Hour of Darkness has been remastered and re-released on multiple platforms, including PC, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. So if you've never played it before, now's the perfect time to dive into one of the most unique and addicting tactical RPGs ever made.
I assume the others arrived here as well.
There's something about Digital Devil Saga that hits different. While most people were busy falling in love with Persona 3 and Persona 4, Atlus was out here taking a massive gamble. They poured a bigger budget into Digital Devil Saga than they did into Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, which is wild considering how iconic Nocturne became over time. But here's the thing, Digital Devil Saga wasn't aiming to be mainstream. It was darker, more narrative-driven, and had a vibe that felt closer to something like a mature sci-fi thriller than a traditional JRPG. The world is gritty, the characters are complex, and the whole devour-your-enemies-to-evolve system, brutal and genius. Graphically, it blows Persona 3 and 4 out of the water. The lighting effects, the enemy designs, the animations, they all push the PS2 harder than most games even dared to try. It's one of those rare cases where the visual style holds up even now, not just because of raw power, but because of smart art direction. What's wild is how clean the transformations looked for a PS2 title. Watching characters morph into their demon forms wasn't just a flashy cut. It was smooth and loaded with style. The animation had weight, the textures were sharp, and the whole sequence felt unsettling in the best way. And yeah, it didn't sell gangbusters like Persona. But for those who played it, Digital Devil Saga is unforgettable. With fans now begging for a remaster, especially after Raidu's comeback, it's pretty clear this series still has a loyal following that refuses to let it fade into obscurity. If you never played Dark Cloud 2, you missed out on one of the most creative RPGs on the PS2. This game doesn't just throw you into dungeons to grind, it gives you a wrench and a camera and tells you to rebuild the damn world. You play as Max, a young inventor, and Monica, a time-traveling warrior, and together you're trying to stop a madman named Emperor Griffin from wiping out the future. Yeah, it's got time travel, city building, weapon crafting, and somehow, it all works. The coolest part? Every town you restore actually changes the future. You take photos of random stuff, invent gear, upgrade weapons like crazy, and rebuild cities piece by piece. It's like RPG meets SimCity with a side of Zelda. The combat is fast and fun, and the weapon upgrade system is crazy deep. Instead of leveling up characters, you're constantly evolving your gear, customizing it, and breaking it down to rebuild even better stuff. It's grindy, but in the most addictive way. And when you're not fighting or building towns, there's fishing, photography, golf. Yeah, there's a mini golf game built into this thing. Visually, it still holds up. The cel-shaded art gives it a timeless vibe, and every area is full of color and personality. And don't even get me started on the music. Tomohito Nishira's soundtrack hits every emotional beat perfectly, whether you're fighting monsters or just vibing in a peaceful town you rebuilt from scratch. Dark Cloud 2 didn't get the hype it deserved back then, but trust me, it's one of the most satisfying and underrated RPGs of that era, earning it a well-deserved Metacritic score of 87. Silent Hill 2 messes with your head in a way most horror games don't even try. It's not just about monsters or jump scares. It's about guilt, trauma, and the darkness people carry inside. You step into this fog-covered town, and nothing feels right. The silence is louder than the sound. The streets feel empty but threatening, and you start questioning if what you're seeing is even real. One of the wildest things is how the game plays with your expectations. Like, there are moments where mirrors feel more threatening than enemies, or where you hear footsteps but no one's there. The game loves messing with your perception. Sometimes doors lead to nowhere, or a room you swore was empty suddenly has something off. The monsters aren't random, they're reflections of the pain and guilt the main character's trying to bury. And the story? It hits hard. It's not just creepy, it's heartbreaking. The music sticks with you, the visuals haunt you, and by the end, you're not just scared, you're emotionally wrecked. Soul Calibur 3 was a true visual showcase for the PlayStation 2, proving that the console still had plenty of power left even in its final years. While the franchise had already impressed players on the Dreamcast and PS2 with previous entries, the third installment took things to another level, delivering some of the most detailed character models and dynamic battle arenas seen on the system. One of the biggest highlights of Soul Calibur 3 was its stunning stage design. Each environment felt alive, with intricate backgrounds, moving elements, and rich textures that gave every battle a sense of grandeur. The lighting effects and fluid character animations only enhanced the experience, making every fight feel like an epic duel. One of the standout innovations of Soul Calibur 3 was its character creation mode, a first for the series at the time. Unlike previous entries, which only featured a fixed roster of fighters, this game allowed players to craft their own custom warriors, choosing from various fighting styles, armor sets, and weapons. This feature added immense replay value, as players could experiment with different builds and create their own unique combatants. Combined with the game's Chronicles of the Sword mode, a strategic, story-driven campaign where custom characters played a central role, this addition made Soul Calibur 3 feel deeper and more personal than any of its predecessors. Despite being followed by more graphically advanced entries, Soul Calibur 3 remains one of the most visually striking games in the franchise. Now, let's talk about a hidden gem, Front Mission 4. If you love deep tactical RPGs with giant mechs and intense war-driven narratives, this game is an absolute must-play. Developed by Square Enix, Front Mission 4 takes everything great about the series, political intrigue, strategic combat, and mecha warfare, and delivers one of the best tactical RPG experiences on the PlayStation 2. The Front Mission franchise has always been known for its gripping military storytelling, and this entry is no different. While each game explores different conflicts, they all tie into a larger, interconnected universe filled with corporate conspiracies and large-scale battles. If you're a fan of series like Evangelion, Gundam, or Xenogears, you'll feel right at home with the game's mix of high-stakes warfare and deeply personal character struggles. Unlike the first two games, which recently received remakes, Front Mission 4 remains exclusive to the PS2, making it a true relic of its time. But don't be fooled by its age. Visually, it pushes the console to its limits, delivering stunningly detailed mechs and battle animations that feel like they belong to a later generation. Black was pure chaos in the best way possible. It wasn't trying to be deep or tactical, it just wanted to blow stuff up, and it nailed that. The sound alone made it unforgettable. Every explosion felt like it shook the room, and the gunfire had this insane punch that made each shot feel real. People literally used it to test out their speakers because the audio was that intense. But it wasn't just the sound. The gameplay was full throttle from start to finish. You were dropped into non-stop chaos with shootouts that felt like blockbuster movie scenes. Bullets tore through walls, cover didn't last, and the action never let up. One cool thing that made Black stand out was how the devs treated guns like the main characters. They put so much detail into the way each weapon felt, sounded, and looked. Reload animations were insanely satisfying, like you could reload the same gun 100 times and it'd never get old. And they didn't overload you with tons of different weapons. Instead, they focused on making every single one feel badass. For a PlayStation 2 game, it looked wild, with explosions everywhere, debris flying, and this gritty, cinematic vibe that still sticks with anyone who played it.
Stay down, I think we got moving up.
Though the same blood of their father flowed through their veins, the two battled each other.
Let's talk about one of the wildest, most over-the-top action games ever squeezed into a PS2 disc, Devil May Cry 3. This game didn't just push the limits of the hardware, it straight-up drop-kicked them. Back when most games struggled to balance speed and visual fidelity, this one came in swinging with lightning-fast combat, insane enemy variety, and visuals that still hold up surprisingly well. Another thing that made the visuals pop was the way lighting and camera angles were used during combat. Devil May Cry 3 had this dramatic, almost theatrical feel, especially during boss fights. The way shadows played off the environments, or how certain moves triggered dynamic camera shifts, made everything feel bigger than life. Combine that with flashy effects from charged attacks and stylish rank transitions mid-fight, and you had a visual experience that felt constantly alive. What really made Devil May Cry 3 stand out was how smooth everything felt. You could juggle enemies mid-air, swap weapons on the fly, and pull off combos that looked like they were ripped straight out of an anime fight scene. The animation work was also next level for the time. Motion capture was sharp, attacks had weight, and Dante moved with that perfect mix of swagger and brutality. Even with multiple enemies on screen and non-stop action, the frame rate barely flinched. That's not something you saw often back then. Capcom absolutely nailed the optimization, and it shows. This was the last Devil May Cry released on PS2, and honestly, it went out with a bang. Beyond the combat itself, the upgrade system gave you even more control over how you played. You could level up weapons and unlock new moves for each style, whether you preferred flashy aerial combos or up-close brute force. On top of that, you had access to different fighting styles like Trickster, Swordmaster, Gunslinger, and Royal Guard, each with its own set of upgrades. If you're into hack and slash, this is a no-brainer. Every slash, every taunt, every slow-motion finish, it's pure adrenaline from start to finish. Tales of the Abyss is a masterpiece that deserves its place among the greatest RPGs of the PlayStation 2 era. Developed by Bandai Namco, the same team behind Tales of Symphonia, this game took everything fans loved about the series and elevated it to a whole new level. While Symphonia became a legendary title on the GameCube and later made its way to the PlayStation 2, Abyss was designed specifically for Sony's console. It arrived late in the PS2's life cycle, but still managed to leave a lasting impact, earning a dedicated following that continues to this day. One of the reasons Tales of the Abyss stands out is its compelling story and unforgettable cast. The game's protagonist, Luc von Fabre, undergoes one of the most profound character arcs in the entire Tales franchise. His transformation from a selfish, naive noble into a true hero is one of the most satisfying narratives the series has ever delivered. Add to that an engaging real-time combat system, deep world building, and a memorable soundtrack, and you have an RPG that still feels fresh even years later. A remastered version for the Nintendo 3DS gave a new generation the chance to experience this incredible game, but for many, the original PS2 version remains the definitive way to play. And with tales of celebrating its 30th anniversary, there's hope that Abyss will finally receive the full remaster treatment it deserves. Okami is a masterpiece that transformed video games into living art. Developed by Hideki Kamiya and released on the PlayStation 2, it stood out not for photorealistic graphics, but for its breathtaking cel-shaded visuals, inspired by traditional Japanese sumi paintings. Every scene feels like a brushstroke on a canvas, making it one of the most visually unique games ever created. What makes Okami so remarkable isn't just its style, it's how seamlessly that artistic vision blends with gameplay. The celestial brush mechanic allows players to literally paint their way through challenges. Instead of relying on traditional combat mechanics, players could pause the action and draw symbols to manipulate the environment, summoning wind, cutting obstacles, or even restoring life to withered trees. This mechanic not only made Okami stand out from other action-adventure games, but also reinforced its central theme of creation and renewal, making the player feel like a divine artist shaping the world. Even today, few games manage to replicate this level of artistic integration. Despite launching during a time when hyper-realistic graphics were becoming the industry standard, Okami proved that a strong artistic direction can make a game timeless. Its beauty carried over to later versions, with ports to the Nintendo Wii and high-definition remasters on modern consoles. With a sequel now in development, fans are eager to see how the franchise evolves. If Okami 2 manages to capture even a fraction of the original's magic, it could once again redefine what it means for a game to be a true work of art. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne isn't just an RPG, it's a trial by fire. A game that tested the patience, strategy, and determination of every player who dared to step into its unforgiving world. Released on the PlayStation 2, Nocturne wasn't an instant mainstream success, but it quickly gained a cult following, especially among hardcore RPG fans. Atlus was still a niche developer at the time, and while games like Persona 3 and Persona 4 helped bring their titles into the spotlight, Nocturne was the gateway for many into the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. It was the first in the main series to be officially localized in English, marking a turning point for the franchise outside of Japan. And while its brutal difficulty may have scared some players away, those who stuck with it discovered an RPG unlike any other. A world consumed by chaos. A protagonist turned into a half-demon. Morality and philosophy clashing in a broken reality where every choice determines the fate of existence itself. Nocturne is not just about survival, it's about reshaping the world based on your own beliefs. With multiple endings, deep mechanics, and an oppressive, eerie atmosphere, this game offers an experience that's impossible to forget. Nocturne's combat is as unforgiving as its world. It introduced the press-turn system, a battle mechanic that rewards precision and punishes mistakes. Landing a critical hit or exploiting an enemy's weakness grants extra actions, while missing an attack or getting countered can leave you defenseless. Every encounter feels intense, forcing you to think several steps ahead. But brute force isn't enough. You need the right allies. Recruiting and fusing demons isn't just a side feature, it's essential for survival. It took 10 years for another mainline entry to follow, proving just how impactful Nocturne was. Even with Shin Megami Tensei 5 bringing new advancements and accessibility, many still see Nocturne as the definitive experience. The remastered version, available on PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC makes it easier than ever to dive into this legendary journey. And with frequent discounts, there's no excuse not to play it. Back in the early 2000s, no one expected Final Fantasy to go full MMO, but Final Fantasy XI did just that, and it was a game changer. It took a huge risk by stepping away from the single-player formula fans were used to, and throwing us into a massive online world where everything felt unpredictable and alive. You needed a PlayStation 2 hard drive just to run it. And yeah, it ran on dial-up. Wild times. What made it special was how much it demanded from you. This wasn't a game where you could grind solo and breeze through content. You had to find a party, learn your role, and actually talk to people. And once the 2006 expansion, Treasures of Aht-Urgen, dropped, things got even crazier. New areas, brutal enemies, and fan-favorite classes like Blue Mage and Corsair. Yeah, that pirate class with a gun and dice mechanics? Total game changer. The world of Vana'diel felt massive. Travel took time. Quests weren't always clear, but that made every victory feel earned. And as more expansions rolled out, the game evolved with new content that kept veterans hooked and pulled in fresh blood. Sure, it wasn't for everyone. The learning curve was steep, the solo experience could be brutal, but built a foundation, both mechanically and spiritually, that Final Fantasy XIV would later perfect. With a Metacritic score of 87, Final Fantasy XI didn't just break the mold, it paved the way for one of the most beloved MMOs out there today. Rogue Galaxy is one of those games that refuses to age. Even after nearly 2 decades, it still holds up visually and gameplay-wise, proving just how ahead of its time it was. Developed by Level 5, the same studio behind Dark Cloud and Dragon Quest VIII, this RPG delivered a vast, colorful universe with a unique art style that made it stand out from everything else on the PlayStation 2. What makes Rogue Galaxy so visually impressive is its masterful use of cell shading, giving the game a vibrant, almost anime-like aesthetic that remains stunning even by today's standards. The environments are diverse and full of life, from bustling space stations to exotic alien planets, each designed with an incredible level of detail. Unlike many games of its era, it didn't rely on pre-rendered backgrounds, making the world feel truly immersive. One of the most innovative features in Rogue Galaxy was its seamless, no-loading screen world. At a time when most RPGs relied heavily on frequent loading transitions between areas, this game allowed players to explore planets, dungeons, and cities without interruptions, making the experience feel truly fluid and immersive. It was one of the first console RPGs to achieve this level of continuity, setting a new benchmark for open-world design. Additionally, it featured an advanced weapon synthesis system that let players combine weapons to create more powerful ones, adding an extra layer of depth to the gameplay. Years later, the game was remastered for the PlayStation 4, further enhancing its visuals while keeping its original charm intact. For a deeper dive into Rogue Galaxy, including a full analysis and behind-the-scenes details, check out the video linked in the card and description. Star Wars Battlefront 2 wasn't just another shooter, it was a full-on Star Wars experience. Massive battles, epic heroes, and that unmistakable galaxy far, far away vibe. It nailed the fantasy of being in the middle of all the chaos, whether you were blasting rebels as a stormtrooper or charging into battle as a Jedi with your lightsaber drawn. Every fight felt like it mattered. The single-player campaign was a nice surprise too. Instead of just throwing you into random missions, it actually told a story from the perspective of the Empire. You saw the rise of the dark side through the eyes of a clone who believed in the cause, which gave the whole thing a different kind of weight. And let's not forget the multiplayer. This game went big with huge maps, dozens of players, ships flying overhead, walkers stomping through the battlefield. It was pure chaos in the best way. You could hop in a starfighter, take down enemies on foot, or even turn the tide by spawning as iconic characters like Darth Vader or Yoda. Whether you were holding the line on Hoth or pushing through the forests of Endor, Battlefront 2 didn't just look like Star Wars, it felt like it.
It is night as you enter the city, and it seems strangely deserted.
If you were into dungeon crawlers back in the day, there's no way you skipped over Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. This one dropped on the PS2 and hit hard with its mix of fast-paced combat, slick visuals, and straight-up addictive gameplay. Unlike some RPGs that bury you in menus and stats, Dark Alliance keeps things simple. You jump in, slash through monsters, grab loot, and level up. Easy to pick up, but tough to put down. Set in the Forgotten Realms, the game leans into that classic Dungeons & Dragons vibe, but without overwhelming you with the tabletop rules. You've got spells, traps, hidden chests, and enough hack-and-slash action to keep your thumbs busy for hours. Whether you roll with a sorceress, a dwarf warrior, or an archer, each class feels different enough to make a second run actually worth it. What really made this one stand out at the time was how clean it looked. For a 2001 game, those water effects, lighting, and animations were next level. Plus, the combat just felt right. Every swing had weight, every fireball had impact, and co-op mode? That was the real party. Grab a buddy and tear through the campaign together. It was chaos in the best way. Sure, the story isn't going to blow your mind, and yeah, it's kind of short. But the pacing is tight, the enemies hit hard, and the overall polish made it one of the best action RPGs on the console. There's a reason it snagged awards and still gets love today. If you missed it back then, Dark Alliance is one of those games that proves less can definitely be more. And with a Metacritic score of 87, it clearly hit the mark.
My power's too weak.
Out of all the horror games that landed on the PS2, Silent Hill 3 might just be one of the most visually haunting. It's not just the monsters or the fog that get under your skin. It's how detailed everything is, from the gritty textures on the walls to the unsettling lighting that makes even a hallway feel dangerous. You can tell the devs went all in to make this game feel like a nightmare you can't wake up from. While Silent Hill 2 often gets the spotlight, the third entry pushed the series' graphics to another level. Character models were sharper, animations more lifelike, and the world just felt heavier, more corrupted. The game directly ties back to the first Silent Hill, so playing that one first makes everything hit harder here. But even on its own, Silent Hill 3 delivers atmosphere like few games ever have. But what really stands out is how the game used lighting and shadow in ways that were way ahead of their time. It wasn't just about making things look spooky, it was about using contrast, flickering bulbs, and harsh directional light to mess with your perception. Some areas felt claustrophobic, while others tricked you into thinking you saw movement in the dark. It created this constant sense of unease that didn't rely on gore or noise, just smart visual design that played with your imagination. This was a time when horror wasn't about cheap jump scares. It was about dread, about walking into a room and feeling like something's wrong, even if nothing's there. That slow, psychological burn made Silent Hill 3 stand out, and honestly, it still does.
But I have seen the face of time, and I can tell you, they are wrong.
There's platformers, and then there's Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. It wasn't just about jumping and fighting, it gave you control over time itself. Messed up a jump? Took a sword to the face? Just rewind and try again. That one mechanic flipped the whole genre on its head. Movement felt buttery smooth. Wall runs, flips, tightrope walks. It was like parkour before parkour was cool. It wasn't just about surviving the level, it was about doing it with style. And even the combat, while simple, flowed in a way that kept you hooked. And let's not forget the level design. Every area felt like one giant puzzle box, where you had to really look around and think about how to get from point A to point B. It wasn't just go right and jump, you'd be scaling walls, flipping switches, dodging traps, and timing every move like a pro. What really hit, though, was the story. It had this cool mix of ancient legends, time travel, and personal redemption. For a lot of players, this was the game that made platformers feel cinematic, emotional, and way smarter than anyone expected. Xenosaga was a bold step forward for Monolith Soft, a studio that had already proven its storytelling prowess with Xenogears on the PlayStation 1. While Xenogears delivered an unforgettable experience with its intricate narrative and stunning 2D sprite work, Xenosaga aimed to redefine the JRPG genre by fully embracing 3D visuals, voice acting, and cinematic storytelling on the PlayStation 2. At a time when RPGs were evolving rapidly, Xenosaga stood out with its ambitious scope. The game featured highly detailed character models, expressive facial animations, and a deep sci-fi aesthetic that felt leagues ahead of many titles on the same platform. The cutscenes, rendered with an almost anime-like quality, gave players a sense of immersion rarely seen in JRPGs of the era. Combined with a complex battle system and a heavily lore-driven world, it was clear that Monolith Soft was pushing the PS2's hardware to its limits. One of the most groundbreaking aspects of Xenosaga was its sheer reliance on full-length cinematic cutscenes, some of which stretched over 30 minutes, an unheard-of feat in the genre at the time. Unlike most JRPGs that balanced gameplay and storytelling in short bursts, Xenosaga leaned heavily into its narrative-driven approach, often making players feel like they were experiencing an interactive anime. It was also one of the first console RPGs to feature fully voiced dialogue throughout, adding a level of immersion that was rarely seen outside of big-budget Western games. This commitment to storytelling set Xenosaga apart, making it one of the most ambitious RPG projects of its time. The series had its challenges, and not all of its ambitious ideas landed perfectly, but one thing was undeniable: Xenosaga set a new standard for cinematic storytelling in RPGs.
It ain't over until I say it's over.
There's a reason why Need for Speed Most Wanted still hits different after all these years. This game threw you straight into the chaos, no warm-up, no mercy. You had your ride stolen, your rep shattered, and the only way to bounce back was to take down the entire blacklist, one racer at a time. What made this game stand out was how it blended insane street racing with a real sense of purpose. It gave you an open world to explore, full of hidden shortcuts and ramps that could turn a losing race into a last-second win. But the real star of the show? Those police chases. You weren't just racing for first place, you were running for your life. Roadblocks, spikes, choppers, everything was out to stop you. And the longer you lasted, the more intense it got. And let's not forget the heat system. Every move you made raised your heat level, and once it got high enough, it felt like the whole damn city was after you. You'd start out with basic patrol cars, but by the time you were deep into the blacklist, they were sending in Corvettes and SWAT units. The mix of arcade handling and just enough realism made it easy to pick up but hard to master. Add a killer soundtrack, sleek car customization, and some of the most iconic racing cutscenes of its time, and you've got a game that still holds its own today. Persona 3 FES hit different. It wasn't just another RPG, it felt like stepping into a weird dream you couldn't shake. You play as this quiet kid who moves into a new city, and from day one, stuff's already off. Midnight rolls around, the streets go silent, the sky turns green, and suddenly everyone's turning into literal coffins. Yeah, not exactly a warm welcome. But that's the hook. Instead of running, you join a group of students who fight creatures called shadows during this hidden hour known as the Dark Hour. You dive into this massive tower called Tartarus that only shows up at midnight, battling your way through floors of monsters while trying to uncover what the hell is going on. And to survive, you summon personas, kind of like inner demons that fight for you, by literally shooting themselves in the head with a special gun-like device. It's bold, it's intense, and it sets the tone right away. What made Persona 3 FES really hit was the double life. By day, you're going to class, making friends, building social links. At night, you're fighting for your life. And those daytime choices? They actually matter. Bonding with people makes your personas stronger, so it's not just filler, it's part of the grind. The FES edition added even more to an already packed game. More content, more polish, and an epilogue called The Answer, a full post-game epilogue where you play as Aigis, an android dealing with grief and existential questions no machine should have to face. It's darker, more philosophical, and pushes the story even further. Combat sticks to the classic turn-based style, but it's tough. You've got to plan carefully, exploit weaknesses, and manage your party like a pro. One wrong move, and you're toast. Plus, with the towering labyrinth of Tartarus and dozens of hours of content, the game keeps throwing new challenges your way. Visually, it's stylish and moody, with a blue-toned aesthetic that fits the game's themes perfectly. And the soundtrack? Absolute fire, catchy, weird, and unforgettable. It isn't just a step forward for the series, it's the game that defined what Persona would become. If you're into RPGs that hit hard emotionally and make you think while keeping the gameplay tight, this one's a must. And with a Metacritic score of 89, it's clear the critics felt the same way.
You're pretty good too, Takeba.
Enemies left! Fire!
Kratos, the once mortal warrior, became the new god of war.
Just when people thought the PlayStation 2 was done, God of War 2 came in swinging like a wrecking ball. The moment you pick up the controller, it throws you into absolute chaos. You're fighting giant statues, clashing with gods, and tearing through enemies like it's nothing. And somehow, the console handled all of it like a champ. What really blew people's minds was how massive everything felt. The environments weren't just big, they were epic. You'd be solving a puzzle inside a temple, then zoom out and realize the whole thing is built on the back of a Titan. The camera work was insane for its time too, constantly moving to show off the scale without breaking the action. The combat felt way tighter than the first game. More combos, more weapons, and the magic actually felt powerful. You were going head-to-head with gods, titans, and creatures the size of buildings. And the story? It hit harder than ever. Kratos wasn't just angry anymore. He was out for revenge with a purpose, and that made every scene feel personal. The ending leaves you on a cliff so wild, it's impossible not to jump straight into the next chapter. There's just something about GTA Vice City that hits different. Dropped into a flashy, chaotic version of the 80s, you're living out a full-blown crime saga, fast cars, big egos, and a whole lot of betrayal. You play as Tommy Vercetti, a guy fresh out of prison, hungry for power, and not afraid to burn bridges to get there. It's basically every gangster movie you've ever loved, cranked up with neon lights and synth music. What made this game stand out wasn't a massive map or endless side quests. It was the vibe. The city felt alive. You could cruise past palm trees at sunset, flip the radio to a banger, and just exist in that world. Whether you were escaping a botched drug deal or hijacking a helicopter, the game never let off the gas. And let's not forget the property system, yeah. Vice City let you straight up buy businesses. From nightclubs to film studios, you were building an empire. Owning properties unlocked new missions, passive income, and made you feel like a true kingpin. Combat is wild, unpredictable, and loud. You've got everything from machetes to rocket launchers, and no mission ever plays out the same way twice. One job might have you crashing a party in a stolen tux. The next, you're flying a chopper to rain bullets on your enemies. For a lot of players, GTA Vice City wasn't just a game. It was the start of a lifelong obsession with open-world chaos.
You poor bastard! Stop him!
Dragon Quest VIII is the game that finally made the West sit up and say, okay, this series is something special. Up until then, Dragon Quest was huge in Japan but kind of slept on everywhere else. Then this came along, fully 3D, beautifully animated, with that iconic Akira Toriyama art style, bringing the whole world to life. And suddenly, people got it. The story kicks off simple. You're a silent hero on a quest to stop a jester-turned-dark lord from wrecking the world. Classic JRPG stuff, right? But it's the way it's told that pulls you in. Every town feels alive, every character has charm, and the humor lands more often than not. It's got heart without being cheesy, and even the slower moments have a vibe that keeps you hooked. The battle system sticks to the basics, turn-based and straightforward, but it works because it's so polished. You've got tension mechanics that let you charge up for bigger hits, and every party member brings something unique to the table. Whether you're smashing enemies with Yangus or casting spells with Jessica, combat stays fun and tactical without slowing the pace. And let's talk about the presentation. The cel-shaded graphics still hold up, the music hits just right, and that full 3D world with real-time day-night cycles made exploring feel rewarding every single time. You can easily pour 100 hours into this and still feel like you've got more to see. Plus, the English voice acting was top-notch, a rare win for JRPGs at the time. Dragon Quest VIII didn't reinvent the genre, but it perfected what made it great. And with a Metacritic score of 89, it earned every bit of that praise. Genji dropped right at the tail end of the PS2's life, and honestly, it felt like Sony was trying to show off everything the console could do before moving on. The game doesn't get talked about much today, but back then, it looked stunning. We're talking buttery smooth motion capture, rich lighting effects, and some seriously cinematic action. It had that old-school samurai vibe with flashy sword combat and a visual polish way ahead of most games on the system. One thing that really set Genji apart was how clean and sharp its textures looked compared to most late-era PS2 titles. The armor designs were incredibly detailed, with visible engravings and metallic reflections that actually changed depending on the lighting. Even the way cloth moved during fights felt unusually dynamic for the time, giving each swing of the blade extra weight and realism. The environments also looked handcrafted, the animations were tight, and every duel felt like a scene from a high-budget movie. It didn't just look good, it felt good to play. The progression system was also a big part of what kept the combat interesting. As you took down enemies and progressed through missions, you'd collect experience and materials that let you upgrade your weapons and abilities. Each character had their own skill path, and unlocking new moves or improving your gear made a real difference in how fights played out. Some upgrades added extra hits to combos, others boosted your special attacks, and by the end of the game, you could pull off some seriously slick swordplay that felt earned. Genji eventually got a sequel on the PS3, but the franchise quietly disappeared after that. Maybe because Sony shifted its focus to other big samurai hits like Ghost of Tsushima. Still, Genji deserves more credit. It's one of those hidden gems that, if you fire it up today, will still turn heads. Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria is a masterpiece of visual design, a game so stunning that it's hard to believe it was developed for the PS2. The level of detail, the beautifully crafted environments, and the fluidity of the animations make it stand out even among modern RPGs. Every scene feels like a work of art, blending vibrant colors with a dark, mythological atmosphere that perfectly complements the game's Norse-inspired story. Coming from the original Valkyrie profile on the PS1, which featured 2D sprites and hand-drawn backgrounds, the jump to full 3D in this sequel was remarkable. The character models were incredibly detailed for the time, with smooth animations and dynamic camera work that made battles feel cinematic. The lighting effects, particle details, and environmental design made it one of the most visually ambitious games of its era. One of the most innovative mechanics introduced in Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria was its photon system, which allowed players to manipulate enemies and interact with the environment in a way rarely seen in RPGs of the time. By shooting photons, players could temporarily freeze enemies in place or even swap positions with them to access otherwise unreachable areas. This added a strategic layer to both exploration and combat, blending puzzle-solving elements with traditional RPG mechanics. Even today, playing Valkyrie Profile 2 feels like rediscovering a hidden gem. The game's artistic direction has aged beautifully, proving that strong visual design can outlast even the most cutting-edge technology. If it were released today with a slight graphical update, it could easily pass as a modern title.
A tale of souls and swords, eternally retold.
While most fighting games were busy copying each other, Soul Calibur 2 came in swinging with style, speed, and a whole lot of personality. It wasn't just about flashy combos or big swords. This game nailed the feel of every hit, every parry, every perfect block. The combat was faster, the mechanics were tighter, and every character felt like they actually mattered. But the real twist? Each console had its own exclusive fighter. PlayStation 2 players got Heihachi with his raw martial arts, GameCube had Link swinging that Master Sword, and Xbox brought in Spawn with his chains and supernatural flair. That move alone had gamers arguing for years about which version was the best. And if you ever dove into the Weapon Master mode, you know that's where the real grind was. You had to complete specific challenges, unlock hidden weapons, and push your skills in weird, creative ways. One round might have reversed controls, another might throw in slippery floors or sudden death rules. It made you think differently, forced you to adapt, and honestly added way more replay value than most fighting games were offering at the time. But no matter where you played, Soul Calibur 2 delivered one of the cleanest, most addictive weapon-based fighting experiences out there.
You're all the same. Final battle, fight!
I am a shadow.
Persona 4 is where the series fully found its identity and ran with it. What starts as a quiet story about a high school kid moving to a small town quickly turns into one of the most gripping murder mysteries in gaming. People are dying, weird stuff's happening on TV, and somehow, you and your new friends are the only ones who can dive into a shadow world and stop it. What makes Persona 4 so special isn't just the story, it's how personal everything feels. Each dungeon is based on a character's inner struggle, and every boss is a twisted version of their suppressed feelings. It's not just about beating enemies, it's about helping your friends face who they really are. And when they do, they unlock the power of their persona. It's powerful, emotional, and honestly kind of inspiring. The game flips between slice-of-life sim and dungeon crawler, and somehow makes both sides addictive. You're leveling up in battle, sure, but you're also leveling up your friendships. The stronger your bonds, the stronger your personas, these powerful spirits you summon in combat. And every choice you make outside the dungeon actually matters inside it. Persona 4 nails the vibe too. The music is catchy as hell, the art style pops, and the characters feel real, like people you'd actually want to hang out with. Plus, the mystery doesn't hand you answers. You've got to pay attention, connect the dots, and when you finally figure it out, that reveal hits different. It's rare for a game to mix heart, humor, horror, and strategy this well. But Persona 4 pulls it off, and that's why it's one of the best JRPGs, landing an impressive Metacritic score of 90.
That's not gonna work!
It's going to attack! Defend yourself!
Back on the PS2, most games were fighting for realism. But Odin's Sphere didn't care about looking real. It aimed for something timeless. It was a full-on 2D RPG, hand-drawn from top to bottom, and even today, it looks absolutely stunning. Like, you could show this to someone who's never seen it, and they'd probably guess it was a modern indie hit. That's how clean, detailed, and vibrant the art is. This wasn't just surface-level beauty either. The animations were smooth, the character designs were rich with personality, and the entire world felt like a moving painting. Every background was layered with parallax scrolling that gave real depth to the scenes, even though everything was technically 2D. The skies moved separately from the trees, which moved separately from the grass, and it all created this rich, dreamlike illusion of space. Combine that with lighting effects that shifted across the environment as battles raged on, and you had a game that felt alive without needing realism. It was pure visual storytelling, baked into every frame. Magic, war, betrayal. Odin's Sphere packed it all into a side-scrolling format that somehow felt huge and epic. Vanillaware, the studio behind it, carved out a visual identity that still defines them to this day. You play one of 5 characters, each with their own arc, gameplay style, and perspective on the same world-ending war. What made the gameplay even more addictive was the upgrade system tied to both combat and cooking. You'd collect phosons, little energy orbs dropped from enemies, and use them to grow plants that gave you experience or ingredients for meals. It sounds simple, but it created this loop where fighting, farming, and feasting were all part of getting stronger. And the soundtrack just added to the whole fairy tale but deadly atmosphere. Years later, they gave it a remaster for PS4 and PS Vita, with better performance and a few gameplay tweaks. But even the original version on PS2 is impressive. It wasn't just beautiful for its time. It's beautiful, period.
Come on!
Get ready to kick butt.
When it comes to fighting games that truly left a mark, nothing hits like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. This game was pure chaos in the best way possible. Over 50 characters, insane tag team mechanics, and non-stop action made it an instant classic. You could mix and match heroes and villains from both worlds to build your ultimate squad, then jump into fast-paced battles where every move exploded with style. What really set it apart was how accessible it felt. You didn't need to be a pro to have fun, but if you knew what you were doing, you could pull off some of the flashiest and most ridiculous combos ever seen in a fighter. The 3-fighter tag system kept the pace electric, letting you swap characters mid-fight and pull off crazy assist attacks that completely flipped the momentum. And visually, it still slaps. The mix of hand-drawn 2D characters and vibrant 3D stages gave it a unique vibe that holds up even today. Whether you were just button mashing with friends or chasing high-level ranked matches, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 delivered pure hype every single time. Grandia 2 is nothing short of a masterpiece. While some may argue that the original Grandia is the superior game, there's no denying that its sequel took everything great about the first and refined it into an unforgettable experience. Originally released for the Dreamcast and later brought to the PlayStation 2, this RPG blends fast-paced combat, compelling storytelling, and a world brimming with adventure. At the heart of Grandia 2 lies one of the best combat systems in RPG history. Its iconic turn-based battle system isn't just about selecting commands. It's about timing, positioning, and strategy. The IP gauge determines turn order, allowing players to anticipate enemy actions and interrupt attacks at the perfect moment. Battles are fast, fluid, and reward precise decision-making, making every encounter feel dynamic and engaging. Unlike many RPGs of its time, combat in Grandia 2 feels more alive, with characters seamlessly moving across the battlefield, delivering cinematic attacks that keep the action thrilling from start to finish. Even after all these years, few RPGs can match the dynamic action of its turn-based, yet highly interactive combat. Add to that a cast of well-developed characters and an engaging storyline that mixes lighthearted moments with deep, emotional twists, and you have an RPG that deserves a spot among the greats. And the best part? The Grandia HD Collection brings both the first and second games to modern platforms like Nintendo Switch, PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One, making it easier than ever to dive into this classic. Resident Evil Code Veronica doesn't always get the spotlight like the main games, but man, it deserves way more love. This game took risks most titles wouldn't dare to at the time. It picked up right after the events of Resident Evil 2 and threw Claire into one of the toughest fights of her life. This game leaned hard into the survival aspect. You're constantly low on ammo, healing items are rare, and every hallway feels like a trap. The story pulls you in fast, Claire's searching for her brother Chris, and things spiral into chaos real quick. When Chris finally shows up, it flips everything on its head. You're not just surviving anymore, you're unraveling a twisted family drama with bioweapons and betrayal everywhere. What made it even more intense was the switch between Claire and Chris during the game. You weren't just playing one long campaign, you were seeing two different perspectives, jumping between them at key moments. That gave the story way more depth and tension, especially when stuff you did as Claire would affect what Chris had to deal with later. Visually, it pushed the hardware hard. The environments were detailed and felt way more dynamic compared to older entries. But what really hits hard is the atmosphere. The locations feel cold, empty, and dangerous, with that constant sense of dread lurking around every corner. And the music? Creepy in all the right ways. It's not trying to be flashy, it just gets under your skin. It's that classic Resident Evil formula, but dialed up with better cutscenes, more voice acting, and some of the best character moments we'd seen in the series up to that point. If you skipped this one, you missed a core part of Resident Evil's evolution. It's a survival horror gem that helped shape everything that came after. Some RPGs fade into obscurity, while others quietly build a loyal following over time. Stella Deus: The Gate of Eternity falls into the latter category, a hidden gem that deserves far more recognition. Released exclusively for the PlayStation 2, this tactical RPG blends deep strategy with an engaging storyline, making it a must-play for fans of the genre. One of the most fascinating aspects of Stella Deus is its artistic influence. Before defining the look of the Persona series, Shigenori Sojima experimented with his style here, laying the groundwork for what would later become iconic in the world of RPGs. The game's dark fantasy setting, strategic grid-based combat, and unique character designs make it stand out, even among more well-known titles. Beyond its striking visuals, Stella Deus delivers a deep and rewarding tactical combat system. Battles take place on a grid-based battlefield where positioning, attack range, and skill management are crucial to success. The game features an AP system, allowing characters to chain multiple actions in a turn, creating dynamic and strategic encounters. Players can also customize their party with a variety of character classes, each with unique abilities, making every battle feel fresh and engaging. With challenging AI and a need for careful planning, it's a title that will truly test your strategic thinking. Unfortunately, Stella Deus never received a remaster or re-release, meaning the only way to experience it today is on original PlayStation 2 hardware. But for those who love discovering overlooked classics, this is a game well worth seeking out.
so bad.
All right, your turn. Which of these PS2 games do you think still holds up today? Or did we miss one that deserves a spot on the list? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm always down to hear what gems you grew up with. And hey, if you liked the video, don't forget to check out Xmod using the link below. It takes less than a minute, and every single download helps the channel with a small commission and keeps this whole thing running. And while you're at it, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.